Hello there, I'm Harvey Retro and welcome to another episode of Retro Saturday Rewind, TV, toy and music nostalgia from the 80s and 90s. Today I'll be counting down my top 5 puppet TV shows by Gerry Anderson. Now I know what you're thinking, most of these have been around since the 60s, which is true, but they also had a huge revival in the 80s and 90s and were a big part of my early morning weekend TV routine. So definitely worth covering on the show. Okay, so before I start my countdown, I will say this list is based on my own nostalgia and opinions, so if I miss something, chances are I never watched it, but if I do miss one of your favourites, please leave a comment down below. Number 5, Joe 90. First aired from 1968 to 69, this show followed the exploits of a 9-year-old boy, Joe McClane, who became a spy after expert knowledge and experience recorded from the world's top academic and military minds is transferred to him via a special machine known as Big Rat, Brain Impulse Galvanoscope Record and Transfer, which was created by his adoptive father. The most vivid memory I have of this show is the excellent psychedelic pop theme tune, paired with trippy visuals of the Big Rat machine in motion. The puppets look great in this one, much more lifelike than before, and the design in general on this one was really good. I think the only reason the show doesn't rank any higher is because of its genre. It was called spy-fi by many because it was a spy thriller sci-fi. Something I'd probably appreciate more now than when I was a kid, because I think it was just a little bit too slow for me back in the day. Number 4.
Terrahawks, stay on this channel. This is an emergency.
Released in 1983 and ran till 1986, and was about a small secret task force that was responsible for protecting the Earth from invasion by a group of Martians led by the evil Zelda. And we think we have it bad in 2020. Prior to Terrahawks, Anderson was noted for his patented supermarionation technique using electronically augmented marionette puppets. Terrahawks took a new approach using a technique called supermacromation, inspired by Jim Henson and his team. These were sophisticated glove puppets this time, which did give a smoother motion, and the removal of strings gave them many advantages, but the trouble is making them less puppet-like and more human in motion. You enter an uncanny valley effect. They are closer to being real and it becomes eerie, no longer charming like the marionettes. The best thing about this show was the villains. The puppets were terrifying, probably due to the uncanny valley effect I mentioned earlier, which made them a little too scary perhaps, but it certainly made them memorable because I've never forgotten them. One episode in particular, I remember the witch-like leader Zelda screeching, "Kill him! Kill him!
Kill Neinstein!"
Doctor, look out!
Despite Terrahawks being eventually successful in its 3-year run in the UK, it failed to make a 4-year American syndicate deal and was cancelled. Apparently the US executives said the puppets were too human-like and American audiences preferred distinctly non-human puppets. It has retained a cult following, but Anderson has claimed on record that he'd rather forget the show. I have a feeling it could possibly be because it ditched the charming supermarionation style, something he was known for and proud of, and the US rejected it because of this. Number 3.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This one was definitely Gerry's giant in terms of success. It first aired in 1965 in the UK and has since been broadcasted in at least 66 countries and repeated periodically for new generations, inspired huge merchandising campaigns, and been followed up by 2 feature film sequels and a live-action feature film. Yep, Thunderbirds was the big one. Set between 2065 and 2067, the show was about the Tracy family and their international rescue organisation, headed by ex-astronaut Jeff Tracy, a widower with 5 adult sons, Scott, Virgil, Alan, Gordon and John, who operated technologically advanced land, sea, air and space vehicles used for rescue missions around the world. The thing that was so great about Thunderbirds was all those fantastic vehicles. Everyone had their favourite. Thunderbird 1, a blue and silver hypersonic rocket plane piloted by Scott. Thunderbird 2, a green supersonic aircraft carrier that transports rescue vehicles and equipment in a detachable capsule piloted by Virgil. Thunderbird 3, a space rocket piloted alternately by Alan and John, with Scott as a co-pilot. Thunderbird 4, a yellow submersible piloted by Gordon and launched from Thunderbird 2. And, last but no means least, Thunderbird 5, a grey and gold space station that relays distress calls from all over the world, which is manned alternately by John and Alan. I was definitely a Thunderbird 2 guy, I guess mainly because it also carried Thunderbird 4, so it felt like a 2-for-1 deal. I didn't know anybody that liked Gordon in his little old Thunderbird 4. Every other Tracy piloted or manned something epic, but poor old Gordon was something that resembled an underwater taxi, come on, let's face it. Another thing that seems very dated now, which I remember vividly, is how much the characters smoked in this show. Their intelligence gathering secret agent Lady Penelope, for example, is seen smoking in 10 of the 17 episodes she appears in. And sometimes you'd see all the Tracys hanging out on Tracy Island puffing away. It's pretty hilarious. I can picture a funny situation where one of them runs low on a mission. Alan? What is it, Scott? Give us a ciggy, mate, I'm bloody gasping. You're always stealing all my fags. We'll talk about this once we've reached orbit. I think the only reason Thunderbirds isn't higher on my list is because it was more about the toys than the show. The toys were incredibly popular, especially the Tracy Island set. In fact, in 1992 it was the hottest item on kids' Christmas lists and sold out everywhere. In 1993, TV presenter Anthea Turner showed kids and parents how to make a DIY Tracy Island on the BBC programme Blue Peter, which sounds like it would be terrible, but it was brilliant. Number 2. First broadcast between 1967 and 1968, this show was definitely a darker, less child-friendly show, made for the bigger kids and adults, with its violent content and themes of alien aggression and war. Set in 2068, Captain Scarlett was about the war of nerves between Earth and the mysterious Mysterons, a race of Martians who possess the ability known as retro metabolism, enabling them to recreate people and objects that they can control. As usual, the humans started it all with their accidental attack on a Martian city, and from that point on, the Mysterons were out for revenge, with ongoing sneak attacks against Earth. These are counted by Spectrum, a similar security organisation to all the other Anderson shows mentioned. In the first episode, the Mysterons engineer a road accident with the Spectrum agent Captain Scarlett, which kills him. The double of Scarlett they create and plan to control is shot by Captain Blue and falls off a tower. The self-healing retrometabolism ability the double of Scarlett now has allows him to return to life after the accident, but with a stroke of luck, the consciousness of the original Scarlett was restored. So he has the Mysteron's ability and is an indestructible badass, but is no longer under their control. That's a huge bonus of Spectrum. The criticism of this, of course, is that if the hero's that powerful and can't lose, where's the fun in that? My answer is simply, well, it worked for Superman, and more interestingly is the question, come on, who would win, Captain Scarlett versus Superman? Leave your answers in the comments.
This is the voice.
That's enough about the main man though. We need to talk about the best character in this show, Captain Black. The reason I love Captain Black is because he's so creepy. He's basically Scarlett's equal, but the Mysterons have full control over his mind. He's like a horror villain, gaunt, pale, driven to commit evil deeds, and for the most part he's absolutely silent. I do remember hearing him speak though for the first time and being terrified.
They're still with us.
They must be homing onto something.
I firmly believe that my love for this character is the origin of my love for slasher villains, and for that reason alone Captain Scarlett claims this high rank. Here it is, the big one. Number 1.
Stand by for action.
Stingray, Stingray. It just had to be. This show is so important to me and brings back so many wonderful memories. It first aired back in 1964 for 39 half-an-hour episodes, but it was its weekend early morning slot on BBC Two in the early 90s where I found it. These 60s Gerry Anderson shows were a great thing to experience with a parent because they had the chance to relive their memories through you. I watched this one and some of the other Anderson shows with my dad, but it was this one that sticks in my mind the most. There's something about underwater adventures that really fascinates me so much. The depths of the ocean are a mysterious thing. Like space, it's another world down there. So what was the show all about then, and why was it so great? Stingray was set in the 2060s. It seems Anderson often liked to set his shows 100 years into the future. It's funny because the shows are so of the time, I didn't even assume they were set in the future. We all love a bit of retro future though, don't we? The series follows the exploits of WASP, World Aquanaut Security Patrol, an organisation that policed the Earth's oceans, and Stingray was the name of their flagship combat submarine. The design of Stingray was awesome. I mean, it's ridiculous, of course. Bright blue, yellow, silver. Not exactly sneaky like a combat submarine would be when you think about it now. But at the time, you weren't thinking about that. You were just thinking about how cool it looks and how soon you could have the toy of this. The thing about Stingray that made me prefer it over all the rest is that, yeah, it had the cool vehicles, but it also had strong, memorable characters. Stingray's crew, Captain Troy Tempest, what a name, Navigator Lieutenant Phones, and Marina, a beautiful mute woman from the depths of the ocean, were all brilliant characters. The show's outro focused on the love triangle between Troy, Marina, and Atlanta, assistant controller in Marineville Tower. Perhaps a strange choice of storyline for a kids show, but I guess James Bond was very popular at the time, and Atlanta in this situation reminded me of Moneypenny in Bond. Now, Troy was a ladies' man, and would often make Marina or Atlanta jealous, but he was mostly stringing Atlanta on, pun intended. So there are aspects of the show that seem very 60s sexist and dated now, with female characters subordinate to men. You could argue that Marina was seen as perfect through the eyes of a 60s male because she was beautiful but mute. Don't say anything, darling, just smile. That kind of thing. One thing that is important to mention though, is that Marina often saved Troy from dangerous situations, making her the hero of the episode. So you can look at it in a positive light too. And one final thing to mention before I close out, is something that totally went over my head as a kid, that was clearly there for the adults watching. Stingray may have been more light-hearted than some of the others, but it definitely had strong Cold War themes. This was common in a lot of Anderson shows, but definitely prominent in Stingray, which was very nuclear-focused. Even Stingray itself was nuclear-powered. The constant threat of enemy infiltration from Titan, a very Soviet-like enemy, and Troy's recurring nightmares of attacks on Marineville, embodying Cold War anxiety. The show had more than just a little hint of Cold War flavour, which definitely adds depth.
Well, what do you know?
So to summarise, Anderson made some great TV shows, and despite the puppet animation being very cemented in its era, it definitely had a great deal of charm to it, and the shows were very big budget with high production value, grand full orchestra scores, well crafted, detailed marionettes, sets, models, shot on 35mm colour film. Just using Stingray as an example, which had a $1 million budget for the series, equivalent to $22 million today. That's a huge amount of money for a kids' TV show, but I love that. Well spent in my opinion. Okay, so that's it for this episode of Retro Saturday Rewind. Hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to post your thoughts and opinions on Gerry Anderson's puppet shows, and I'll see you next time. Right, thanks for watching guys. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like. If you want to see more from us, hit that subscribe. See you next time on Enigmatic Productions.